Hey guys, how's it going? Raffle here with a brand new video, and before we get into the top 5 decks of the Emerald Dream mini set, I want to let you guys know that if you're watching this video on the first or second day after it has come out, I am currently streaming over at twitch.tv/ClarkHellScream to benefit the American Heart Association by playing some Balatro. We're going to have some incentives to where every single time we hit one of our $250 goal marks, I'll be donating an additional $5 on top of the $20 that I'll be starting today's stream with. So if you guys want to come on by, have some fun with Balatro, a really fun card game that is actually solitaire, and you don't have to worry about your pesky opponents getting in the way of your mulligan or getting in the way of your game plan, then feel free to come by the stream as we play some card games for a good cause. But now that we've talked about that, let's talk about what exactly is going on in the Hearthstone meta, because Pirate Rogue is back to being one of the most consistent decks in the game, and honestly, Rogue is just really good at top 1000 Legend. I really don't think there's any way to describe just how good tempo is right now, other than showing you guys the first 3 decks on my list, which are going to be 3 Rogue decks. We've got this Pirate Rogue, which is all about just playing your pirates alongside the Crystal Cove location, and you can get a bunch of card draw by playing Toy Boat into a bunch of Bargain Bin Buccaneers, and you can summon up to 3 of these Bargain Bin Buccaneers thanks to Lucky Comet and get 3 card draws out of the Toy Boat if you happen to do this in the same turn. This is one of those decks that is very important for you to maximize your Sandbox Scoundrel value, because your 1 mana Scoundrel plus your Shadow Step is going to do so much mana cheating that you do not care that Saladrassil costs 8 mana. I made this prediction already and it looks like it's coming true, but I said that the nerf to Saladrassil would impact almost every class except for Rogue, due to the fact that Rogue has both prep as well as a Scoundrel. So you could still discount the Saladrassil by 5 mana, and it's just really, really good in Rogue in order to remove a minion, as well as giving a +5/+5, or even dealing an extra 5 damage if you have the mana available. So this deck just has a lot of pocket gas, and if you want a very quick legend grind, this is one way to do it, but this deck takes a little bit of finesse. So don't just think it's the simple 1, 2, 3 play a curve combo deck. It's a little bit more intricate than that. And next up, we have what I believe is the best deck in the game if you know how to play your outs thoroughly. Because this is a deck where it seems simple at first, where it's like, yeah, just draw some cards. But where the real finesse of this deck really comes into play is how you utilize your Twisted Webweaver turns and how early you can get your Playhouse Giant turns. I have actually seen someone post a screenshot of Cycle Rogue doing the combo by turn 2. Nim went up against someone playing this combo, and they just had the absolute nuts to draw 20 cards by turn 2, but Nim still won this game playing the Tempo Rogue. I'm using this as an example that sometimes decks can high roll, but you still have a chance as long as you don't mentally check out of the game. And Cycle Rogue can sometimes be one of those decks where it feels like the game is just over, but the big weakness of this deck is that if you can just deal with the Playhouse Giant board, this deck has almost no comeback ability to where it has to rely on agency espionage. This is just one of those cards to where sometimes it bails you out of a bad circumstance, sometimes you just don't happen to find anything. So as long as you deal with the board and you try your best to prevent them from Shadow Stepping the Moonstone Mauler, if you are a deck that is weak against the Asteroid combo, then do everything in your power to remove key minions so that way they do not get Shadow Stepped, and your opponent gets especially punished if they overextend a minion without realizing it. So Cycle Rogue is just one of those decks that it's very powerful right now, but it does have very legitimate weaknesses that at top legend you can definitely take advantage of. But there's a new version of the deck that might be a little bit better, but personally I'm not really a big fan of going all in on Incindius and Blood Mage Thalnos, because I'm not really the biggest fan of just trying to make the spell damage combo work. I feel like there's a lot of inconsistencies that are available with this list, but better players are getting better results with this deck than I am, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. If you're someone that really misses Incindius being in the meta, then you're going to be very happy with this particular meta update, because there's also Spell Damage Druid that has come back, so Incindius is seeing some massive surges in play right now, very legitimately, because there's not a lot of honest-to-God combo decks or OTKs available right now, especially after the Zarimis and the all of the other nonsense got nerfed. We lost a lot of OTKs, especially considering how one OTK completely ruined the game. So yeah, I feel like this is definitely a better deck to replace something like King Plush Hunter, but I can definitely understand if some people are not happy that Psycho Rogue is on top right now, because once again, we are being ruled by 0 mana 8/8s. I just don't think we're ever gonna solve the giant problem. Next up, we have the deck that can absolutely counter those pesky rogues if you happen to encounter just too many of them. And Starship decks are absolutely back. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about obvious meta decks that don't have any real new cards from the mini set, because at least the other decks have a little bit of mini set cards in them. I don't know if the Pirate Rogue does, but Starship decks seem to be making a massive resurgence because they are a great tool to actually stall the game and to play something that isn't just go Unga Bunga. It really feels like we're going into an Unga Bunga meta or an armor meta, because Armor Demon Hunter is coming back. Warrior has, you know, some relevancy and popularity, although its power level isn't exactly there. But Death Knight survivability is still absolutely cream of the crop, top of the tier. There's not really a lot that you can do if this deck happens to pop off its value. And one thing that I want to note, I'm not a fan of Kill Jaden in this particular deck, but if you're fighting a lot of Kill Jaden decks, maybe it's necessary. But the real reason why I don't like this card, particularly in Starship DK, is because you really want to win by making an unkillable Starship that has Reborn on it, that is constantly summoning a bunch of 10 drops. So even if your opponent does have a Brawl or a Ceaseless Expanse, for example, they're going to need something else other than that one board clear in order to deal with all the minions that your Starship is going to be generating. So if you want my personal opinion, you don't need Kill Jaden, and if you really want a second Corpse Explosion, you can either take out the Kill Jaden or you could take out a Suffocate in order to put in that second AoE, which I feel like is very important. But if you're really someone that likes Kill Jaden, you can play this deck as is, and honestly, it will still perform extremely well. Next up, we have the new version of Hog Demon Hunter, and honestly, I feel like this deck is just not being explored because some people just don't like the idea of playing Yamada in Hearthstone. I just don't get it. This deck is super powerful and even got nerfed in the most recent update by Cliff Dive going from 6 to 7 mana, and it doesn't really feel like it really nudged this deck at all. I mean, the only thing that's nudged is the Cliff Dive scam, but sometimes you'd be playing Cliff Dive on turn 7 anyway, so it's like, if you have a weapon equipped, it doesn't really feel like this card really got hit with a nerf. However, because the meta has slightly changed, there are people that are now playing Climbing Hook in this deck because it's very easy for you to stick a minion above 5 attack because you're always going to have a Ravenous Fell Hunter. You might even have an Eldari Inquisitor, which gives you a burst combo of potentially 14 damage if you have hero power. And you've also got Mag, you've also got the Fell Bat. There's a lot of ways to pressure extra damage with this Climbing Hook. I don't 100% believe in it, but the stats that I'm looking at right now say that Climbing Hook is the best version of this deck, and this version has the best win rate. So if you're somebody that does enjoy the play pattern of Ball Hog, just mulligan for your Ball Hogs, just mulligan for the Ravenous Fell Hunters, have your Tusk-Spears ready to go, and have an AoE in case you need it to clear a very important board. Because that's pretty much what this deck does. You AoE at the right time, you play the Ball Hog, you never lose the board because of the Ravenous Fell Hunter, and then sometimes you have unique lethals that are possible not only with Cliff Dive, but with Infiltrate against your own pigs. So do not think very linearly when it comes to Ball Hog. There might be a hidden lethal that you are not seeing. Next on my list is going to be some Warlock archetypes, because it turns out I was right. The Curse Campaign nerf feels a little bit good because now you can stop Curse Campaign into the layover on 4, which is a perfect 7 mana combo after you play your 5 mana Yor on turn 5. But now that Curse Campaign is an extra mana and you can't set up that perfect 5 into 7 play anymore, the way that you get above this weakness is by playing Curse Campaign into Conflagrate. It's almost the exact same thing, except you don't get the Reborn value, so you have 2 Yors instead of 3. In some instances, that's kind of a good thing. So that way you're not overdrawing a bunch of cards. You can meaningfully get cards out of your hand while getting the value out of them. And it's kind of funny that we're seeing a list with only 1 Heart of Legion now instead of 2. I'm not really sure what got cut out of the list in order to make this inclusion, but there's just a lot of consistency that's behind not only Starship decks, but Wheel Warlock, your Warlock. This card is still absolutely important for Warlock, and even though Curse Campaign technically did get nerfed, it really doesn't feel like the power level of Warlock has changed. If anything, the only thing that's really changed for Warlock is going to be its matchup spread. So you might have some greedier matchups that might be a little bit, you know, value based, and you have to focus on outvaluing your opponent versus trying to kill them as early as possible with Wheel of Death. But this is exactly why I like this deck. If you're somebody that really wants to learn this deck, I would highly recommend checking out my video that I did with Pocket Train about a month ago. It's a slightly different version of the deck with like a 3-mana curse campaign, but the knowledge is still there. The idea and the bridging of your AoEs is very, very important in this deck. And if you want to really learn how to do this deck like the pros do, I would highly recommend checking out my video to really see the plays you're not considering with Wheel Warlock. But if you're looking for a deck where you're really aiming to test your abilities within Hearthstone, I would highly recommend playing Mill Warlock right now, because this legitimately is the most difficult deck that is available in the meta right now. And oh boy, does it just feel satisfying whenever you play this deck correctly and actually pop off the combo. This is definitely one of those decks that I would use as an example, to where it's like, you could complain about going up against Mill Warlock and getting comboed and not feeling like it's a fun experience, but I would highly recommend anybody that thinks that this deck is stupid to really try playing it yourself and see just how many moving pieces are available in this deck and just how intricate the combo actually it is. This is literally an example of a Hearthstone deck where you deserve every single victory that you can get with it, because the idea of this deck is honestly just one of the most insane things that's available right now. It's not a straightforward combo. You have a lot of turns to build up your gigantic, you know, combo turn of eventually playing your Summoner Dark Morrow into a bunch of Arc Druid of Thorns that hopefully will have the death rattle of the Amalgam, of the Prize Vendor, of the will hopefully have Rush from the Escape Pod in case you need that lethal later on. That's a little bit, you know, more intricate, and I am really trying to learn this deck myself so that way I can make a video telling you guys about it. But this deck really is, there are just so many little things that are happening where there are even possibilities of you setting up lethals with Nomelia if you happen to get this death rattle into the Andrew Folator. So this deck really is just a Hearthstone player's Hearthstone deck, where if you really want to master the game and become the best player you can, play Mill Warlock. It's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road, but trust me, you will become the best player possible if you can learn a deck like this. Because if you can learn this deck, you can literally learn any deck in Hearthstone as long as you know the math behind it. And now the last archetype that I'm going to be putting in my top 5 top legends list is going to be Spell Damage Owl Druid. And I have 3 different lists to show you guys because I haven't tested this deck at all. This is more so of a new emergence in the meta where in the past day or two, maybe even the past 3 days, there have been a lot of EU players particularly that are testing and stress testing the spell damage combo, to where there are some people that are running Alonius, there are some people that are running Incindius, and this deck right here is running them both. And personally, I really feel like both make sense in a deck like this, just because you want the maximum amount of damage against like these armor decks, for example. This is one of those metas to where you need to have a damage from 30 in a lot of instances, but you also need a lot of combos to be above 30 damage because of how many matchups are going to be control based. So this is the one trick with this particular combo deck, is finding that perfect blend of dealing with aggro tools as well as dealing with control tools. So that's why you have cards like Ethereal Oracle in order to draw through the deck, so there's a lot of cycle. You have Oaken Summons that works really well with Ethereal Oracle, which is kind of a cool synergy I never really thought about. But then you also have plenty of removal, so that way you have cards like Seabreeze Chalice. This is one of the very first lists that I've seen that is actually not running Rising Waves, so there is still plenty of other cards you could put in here if you are not particularly a fan of any of these particular lists or these cards. This Go With The Flow though, which I think I massively agree with, because extra spell damage means everything, not only with Alonius, but with the Incindius. You've also got Woodland Wonders, for board, very similar to how Discover Hunter can set up a board of taunts in order to delay a very necessary turn. You have Emergisil finding some very real play. Like, the thing I like about this archetype is just seeing how creative people get with the lists. Now, I don't like the play experience of going up against this deck just because I'm kind of still burnt out over the last Spell Druid meta that we had. But if you're somebody that was missing this deck because it got nerfed, welcome back, Owl. I mean, you get to OTK people again, and now we have the new combo deck that maybe Reddit is gonna go in flames up about. But if you're somebody that doesn't like the idea of running the Alonius, then you could just go all in on trying to support your Incindius. Now, I feel like this deck has a lot less potential in order to combo, let's say, a deck with armor, but this deck, I feel like, is a lot more equipped in order to deal with more tempo-based decks, like a Menagerie deck, for example, because the way that you beat Menagerie as this deck is by playing your spell damage and then having a well-timed swipe to remove their value and their minions, so that way they can't pressure you, giving you plenty of enough time in order to rebuild the armor, to rebuild your combo, and then that way you can do a smaller burst combo in order to win the game. But in order to have this win condition, you have to sacrifice your good matchups against the armor decks, so it really just depends on what you are experiencing and what you are playing against before you ask yourself, what version of Owl Druid should I play? Because there's one more version that I feel like is very experimental, but for some reason, the data is saying that it's a positive win rate. There are some people out there that are actually playing Spell Damage Starship Druid. I don't really understand what is going on here, to be honest. I feel like the way that you win this with this deck is that you play your Starship pieces for value, and then you have a really good Cosmic Phenomenon turn where you buff your board almost out of range of any AoE depending on what time you play this. Because if you're going up against a Brawl, obviously you can't, get around that. But if you're going up against like a Druid that does have a Rising Waves, for example, then you can very easily get out of range depending on how exactly you build around your Cosmic Phenomenon. Because if you got a big board and you just want to use this as a board buff, then that's not necessarily a bad idea. It's really interesting to see how finally this card is seeing play. The Arcane Spell Druid Starship deck is actually starting to see play with a positive win rate. Like, I really just, you can kind of see that I'm struggling to talk about this deck because I don't understand how it wins. So if anyone's got any ideas that they want to share in the chat, feel free to leave a comment talking about how exactly you win with Starship Druid, because there are some other greedier versions of this deck that I am seeing, but their win rates are just not there, so that's why I'm showing it in this particular video. So if you're looking for some interesting decks, we've got some interesting decks for you, because now we're going to start getting into the decks that I believe are the best at Diamond through Legend, but that doesn't mean that you can't have success with them at the top ranks in the game. Now, these are the lists that I believe that you can have success at Diamond through Legend, but some of these decks are going to take a little bit of finesse, and almost all of these decks could actually see success at top 1000 Legend if you know what you are doing and if you just play enough games. And Murmur Shaman has honestly made a pretty tremendous comeback where Norwis was able to go from rank 141 to rank 28 in one day, finishing up with a 34-15 win rate. So this deck is starting to come back, but it's really dependent on what matchups you are experiencing. According to this data that I'm seeing, he had the highest win rate against Hunter, Paladin, and Priest, which makes a lot of sense. The main thing that you want to do with Murmur Shaman is to just obviously get it to the Murmur turn and then set up a gigantic board of like taunts thanks to Nebula that your opponent has absolutely no way of dealing with. And the only real new card of this deck really got was Fyrakk. But Fyrakk has an actual use in this deck as being like a pseudo comeback card in case you need to, destroy a board. You have a lot of like big minions that need to die that you can just maybe throw some fireballs at. Maybe you get lucky and hit like an AoE or something like that. It really just depends on the luck of the draw from the Fyrakk. But the one piece of advice I can definitely give you is to not play Shutter Block alongside your Fyrakk. I did this thinking that it would be funny, and it's honestly just kind of sad how nothing can happen or you will just overdraw everything immediately. It really feels like Fyrakk has two modes, where he's in mill mode or he's in deal damage mode. So I don't really think you ever want to play Shutter Block with Fire Rack unless it's like literally your last ditch resort where you have to do something, otherwise you're gonna die. Because other than that, I would try to use your Shutter Block alongside your Nebulas if at all possible, or maybe even alongside your Malorn if you have one of those games to where you do need the extra wild beasts. The only other thing you can really use the Shutter Block with is Ysera, and I've seen a lot of takes how Shutter Block with Ysera is kind of considered a bait move because after you do your Ysera combo, you probably still have Bob the Bartender available already. So if you're really caring about that extra mana, you could just use the Bob. But the issue with Shutter Block into Ysera is that there are a lot of times that you will find yourself not having enough value in order to generate a game-winning board, like with Nebula, for example. It's very important for you to Hagatha in order to hit those Nebulas so they can become 1-mana minions that you discount to 0, and it's very important to triple them up because it is really difficult to deal with not only elusive minions, but elusive minions with taunt. Next up is Protoss Mage, and honestly, I don't even really think that this version of the deck is that good. I am not particularly a fan of Tidepool Pupil. I would rather put in a second Ancient of Yore, but when I was looking at statistics for this deck, man, this is just the one. I don't know how much I believe in the Exarch Hataru, although I will keep it in this video because I really like this card, and I am hoping that there will be a way to utilize this card for some kind of like APM combo in the future. But as of right now, the only reason why you're really playing this card is because obviously you have Ysera to increase your mana cap to have a ridiculous amount of mana, and you can then play the Hataru later in the game in order to maybe find a bunch of cards like Shield Battery. You can find all of your Protoss Mage cards from this, but you also might find secrets. You might find a Blizzard in the right moment. Maybe you hit a Tsunami, even though it is a bit expensive. There's a lot of things that this card can do, but generally speaking, if you don't have the dust for it, I wouldn't go out of your way. Just replace it with a Yor, and you're probably going to be chilling with this kind of deck. If you want to put in any other card, like maybe a Grifta or something in case of the Pupil, you could go that direction. The biggest issue that I have with Protoss Mage is that this is a very boring archetype for me. It's a combo deck, it's a control deck, but it's honestly the worst parts of both of those archetypes in my opinion. So I really don't want Protoss Mage to be good. So yeah, Protoss Mage is good. There might be some better lists out there, but I just could not be bothered to find the good one because I just don't want this archetype to be good, you know what I mean? And now we're gonna start getting into the Menagerie decks. How good are Menagerie decks? They're pretty good. They're not like insane. They're better than okay. They're not. There's a lot of decks that are just really bad if they have the Menagerie Jug. But there are, I believe, 2 or 3 decks in this video that do have Menagerie Jug in them, and this is definitely going to be the best one. The one thing I'm really sad about is that we buffed Imbue Priest like crazy, and all we have done is enable this aggro tech. Now that you have the change of the Imbue hero power to where it now gives you a playable priest card, essentially, you can use this in an aggro deck and not really care about the mana discount, because if you're trying to find cards that are 2 mana or 1 mana or less, you are more likely to find cards like Orbital Halo, your Acupunctures, or more cards that you just want to tempo out and get out of your hand, and that is how you are utilizing the Imbue hero power in this particular priest deck. Now, the biggest issue that I have with this deck is that it's an aggro deck and it's a priest deck. So I'm probably never going to play this archetype, but if you're somebody that is really enjoying aggro decks right now, I don't want to take that away from you. So the one thing I will leave you with is Purifying Power. This version of the deck is not nearly as popular as it should be in my opinion, and the reason why I love this idea in the deck is because one issue that Menagerie decks usually face is survivability and maintaining your minions. Now you have another useful tool that can be used to keep your minions alive, and then you have a better chance of hitting your Menagerie Jug, because the biggest issue that I have with this card in general is that if you're not playing it on turn 5 and getting the full value out of it, it really seems difficult to win as a Menagerie deck, because you need that surprise burst turn where suddenly your opponent's like, oh wait, they dealt like 12 to me, I'm sitting at like 5 and I can't kill the entire board now. So that's how you want to use the Menagerie Jug if at all possible, and Purifying Power does give you a way to keep your minions alive until you reach that very crucial turn. And specifically with Trusting Fishing Rod as a good way of pulling minions from the deck, I really like the idea of Purifying Power. Maybe not a 2-of, but aggro priest is really starting to purify the meta, if you know what I mean. Next up, we have the Rainbow Menagerie Death Knight, and this deck has honestly been kind of the boogeyman of the Diamond through Legend meta. I don't know why this deck has such a high win rate. Maybe it's because people aren't thinking about how to play around Horizon's Edge, for example, by removing the minions at the right time. Maybe people just don't realize how good Monstrous Mosquito really can be if this minion doesn't get taken care of. Because if this card gets like 1 or 2 turns of procs when there's a board on the field, it kind of just feels like it's over, because then you can play your Observer of Mysteries, get secrets, disrupt your opponent. Then you have Eliza Goreblade in order to make your sticky Reborn Death Rattle minions even more sticky and annoying to deal with. You have Ghoul's Knight, which can be used essentially as a 4-mana Pyroblast if you were lucky enough to play this card into an empty board against your opponent. And then yet again, you have the Menagerie Jug, which makes a lot of sense in this Death Knight deck, because you have cards like Murmy, you have Forbidden Swarm, which gives you Undead Beasts as well. There's a lot of double tribes in this particular deck. We have an Undead Pirate, for example. So there's a lot of ways of getting the full value from Menagerie Jug, even if you have the same minions on the field. So this is just one of those decks where I feel like a lot of people just don't realize how much damage this deck is really doing until suddenly their hero has exploded. So if you're somebody that is really trying to find like an easier list that'll take you to Legend in a little bit of a fast time, I would try this deck out. But if you're someone in top 1000 Legend, I probably wouldn't give this deck a go, because it just gets trashed by the control decks that are popular. Next up, we have Imbue Paladin, and here's something I have to say about this deck. I have heard a lot of people saying that Imbue Paladin is the new plush meta. Can you guys just stop that? That's not at all what this deck does. The thing I love about this deck is that, yes, you do have a win condition that is considered uninteractive, because the main win condition of this deck is to ramp up to 10 mana dragons, so that way your portal can literally only hit 1 of 2 cards. You are either going to hit your Runaway Blackwing, or you are going to hit the Briarspawn Drake, which is exactly what you want, so you can play Equality, make all of the minions cost 1 HP, so that way you can use your Briarspawn's ability to kill your opponent and deal lethal damage. But the great thing about this deck is that you are not doing that combo every single time. There are plenty of ways of winning with tempo, where you can use your Acronos, for example, to win back a losing board state. You can have a big turn where you summon a bunch of minions from your deck or even from your hand, and then suddenly you are having a very honest-to-God comeback, and that is everything that I want in a Hearthstone game, where it feels like there is some honest-to-God comeback ability, survivability. There is something that I can do in order to get back into the driver's seat. That is all I want in my Hearthstone games, is having that comeback phase. So now that we have the 10 mana dragons in mind, how else can this deck win a game? Because you still have Ursul into Renewing Flames, and I'm gonna have to say that I was wrong on this take. I thought Ursul and the Renewing Flames would just be too slow going into this meta, but it turns out that the meta is slow enough to where you don't really care about running an 8 mana card to always tutor the 7 mana card, and the reason why it matters is because it can remove board as well as healing you. For a lot of people, this is going to be obvious, but the biggest thing that really changed my opinion on this deck is how it turned from a combo deck, like I was telling you earlier, where you're all in on some of these 10 mana dragons, versus now you are just a pseudo controlled tempo deck, kind of. I mean, I just don't know how else to put it. You are fighting for the board very frequently while also controlling the board with cards like Equality, Consecration, and Holy Glow Sticks in order to really make sure you have all the removal that you need at the right time. So that way your board, it becomes more threatening. So I love this deck, and I love what this deck provides, and this list right here is from Jombre, and one thing I really enjoy in this deck is the Royal Librarian. You can use this card not only against Death Rattle minions that you really don't want to go up against, but you might be able to use this against the Mirror in order to deny cards like the Gold Petal Drake, for example. This may not seem like the most ending, the most powerful game plan possible, but the reason why I like it is that if your opponent needs those 10 mana dragons, you now have a way of getting in the way of that. And that's just one way to use Royal Librarian. You could probably give me a bunch of great examples with this card, but most notably, if you're going up against Demon Hunter right now, you could stop those ferocious Fellbacks. You could stop the Ravenous Fell Hunters. There are ways of getting rid of those minions now that we have one silence available, and there have been a lot of games where silence would have been very good. Now, I haven't had a game where I popped off with this card yet, but I'm going to trust Jombre because he substituted this card in place of a second Dragon Tamer. So I just really like the idea of this deck. I really like what Imbue Paladin is doing to the meta, and as of right now, it seems like a very solid tier 3, almost tier 4 deck, depending on what stages of ladder you are checking out at the moment. So here's my endorsement. Imbue Paladin fun. Imbue Paladin good, and you can even have success with it at Top Legend. Next up is a deck that I will be making a deck guide on very soon. I actually tested this deck for the very first time on stream yesterday. I've only played 6 games, where my very first game was off stream. It wasn't impressive. I didn't pick up the deck again. And then chat was like, please, Mr. Streamer, can you please play Dark Gift Warlock? And I was like, all right, fine. I'll give it one more try. And then we ended up going 5-0 with it. So it's really interesting how Dark Gift Warlock has taken this this shape right here, because one card that really made me interested in the deck was actually the Sketch Artist. Sketch Artist makes a lot of sense in this deck because it can give you an extra copy of Table Flip, but the other shadow card that's available in this deck is your Demonic Studies. And that is the reason why we are running Foreboding Flame. I don't agree with this, but every single Dark Gift deck that has a good win rate is running Foreboding Flame, and I believe the reason why it makes sense is not just because you're going to get random demons from the Demonic Studies, but you're going to get random demons from your Dark Gifts. You're going to get random demons from the Shadow Flame Stalker that literally discovers a demon with a Dark Gift and gives you a copy of it. So this is just one of those decks where you really have to finesse your current hand and figure out not what is the best play currently, but what is going to set up for the good play down the line. So there are some times where you have to play for tempo. There are some times where you have to just draw out your deck so you can get your table flips at a cheap mana cost. There are times where you have to just go unga bunga, play your minions when they're available because you need a taunt minion on the field at that moment. This is really a Hearthstone player's Hearthstone deck in terms of I have so many options, but which one do I go with? And knowing which one is the best option is really going to make you have fun with this deck, because there were a lot of surprising lethals that I had with Wallow the Wretched. One thing that is very important to talk about with this deck is how Overgrown Horror is super important for this deck. The reason why it's super important is the moment that the Wallow gets extra Dark Gifts from minions that you give other Dark Gifts to, Wallow is considered a Dark Gift minion as well and can receive the discount from the Overgrown Horror. So you don't even need to high roll the discount Dark Gifts that are available. You just need to have this minion buffed. You just need to play an Overgrown Horror on it, and then you can be so simple as to run Wallow into Eternal Layover or Wallow into Eat the Imp, because there's one very important Dark Gift that if you get the Reborn and it comes back with full enchantments, that enchantment also includes Charge. So if you have a Charge Reborn Wallow with Wind Fury, you can attack with it about 4, maybe even 6 times if you have enough mana discounts. So this deck has a shit ton of potential. That's right, I'm gonna throw down the S-bomb. It has a shit ton of potential. It is actually a very fun deck when you get it to work. There are just going to be a few moments where you might get frustrated because there are a lot of options and it is very easy to get lost in the sauce. But I will be making a video guide talking about Dark Gift Warlock in the next couple of days, because as of right now, I've got a lot on my plate. Next up is going to be the only Hunter archetype that is on this list, but if you want another Hunter archetype that's good, there's a Handbuff Hunter that's pretty good that actually does run the pirate, the 3 mana pirate that summons a copy. I forget exactly what it's called. But yeah, there are some hunters that are using this and Ferocious Fells. So yeah, if you want that list is available out there somewhere. But what I want to talk about right now is Starship Hunter, because it's really funny how originally there was a version of this deck that literally only ran biopods that people were having success with before the patch went out and we had our most recent balance changes. There were some people that were really trying to play the fun side of Hunter without King Plush getting in the way, and the whole point of this deck is to make as many biopods as you physically can. So you can bring them back very easily by having Ranjari Scout into discover minions from your deck. You've also got the Natalie in order to discover minions from your deck, so you have a lot of ways of just generating extra copies of the biopod. You've also got Sasquatch, so if you happen to hit a cheap biopod, you summon 3 of them in a turn, you can then play Sasquatch going into the next turn, and then suddenly you have 3 more. And the whole point of doing this is getting a crap ton of death rattles, so that way you can play the Terror Scale Stalker and automatically win the game. Now, how good is this deck? I really don't know. I feel like this deck is going under a lot of experimentation in this most recent metagame, because now we are seeing people go back to running the Arcanite Defense Crystal, and if you notice, there's only 1 in the deck because this deck is really specific and needs cards like Bob. It needs a Ceaseless Expanse. It has to run Alien Encounters and all of the Discover cards alongside it, which means that you have to run your Tidepool Pupils in order to keep yourself alive. This is the reason why I really enjoy this Hunter deck, because it is all about finessing your way of coming back from unfavorable positions. It is honest to God interaction, even though it does have what you could consider a bullshit OTK. But the thing I really enjoy about this deck is, again, in order for this deck to be stupid, you have to give it time and you essentially have to high roll with it if you don't happen to hit, you know, like your Ranjari Scouts into biopods. There are other ways that you could finesse games that don't require you to high roll, and that's what I really enjoy about Hearthstone decks, is that, yeah, the high roll is there and the high roll is possible, but you don't have to high roll every single game in order to win. So if you're looking for an interesting Starship deck, Starship Hunter might be the deck that you're looking for. Look away, look away, guys. This is the last deck that we have on what I believe are the best decks at Diamond through Legend. And well, Armored Demon Hunter is back. I went, I think, 22-9 with the deck, 23-9. I had an absurd 69% win rate with Armored Demon Hunter yesterday when I was trying it on stream, and I had a lot of fun. I'm sorry. I like this archetype. I know I could be wrong. I'm allowed to be wrong. Remember, guys, I hated King Plush, and there were some people that loved King Plush. I don't mind being wrong. All I want to do is just have fun. And if you're somebody that likes degenerate armor decks, if you like Kill Jaden, if you like making the biggest shit possible because big numbers make your brain go burr and go happy, then play this deck. Armored Demon Hunter, there'll be a video guide coming out on this deck in the next couple of days. Even though it's not really going to be a guide, it's more so going to be, you know, a video of people getting slaughtered. This deck is just really good in the right hands. The whole reason why this deck is really good is because you can just play Arcanite Defense Crystal into Fellbat on 7, and if you do this combo, you have Return Policy that can be used in order to guarantee hit the Ferocious Fellbat to where you get that death rattle, and then you can very easily play Ferocious Fellbat into Cube because you have Ysera increasing your mana cap, and Ysera feels really good in this deck because you want to go past turn 10 very frequently, and then after you play Kil'jaeden Portals, sometimes you want the extra mana in order to like do draw turns so you don't run out of gas. You have plenty of mana so you can utilize the minions that you're going to draw guaranteed. There's just a lot of things in this deck, and I'll be giving a lot more comprehensive thoughts on how exactly to play this deck and the deck guide that we'll be posting in the next couple of days. So yeah, Armored Demon Hunter, it's back. I'm sorry, but it's the truth, and it does have a buff of 50% at top 1000 legend as well. So do with that information what you will. This deck is really good and very fun in my opinion. And now the last 9 decks that I will be showing you guys are going to be some of the spiciest decks that I have seen, or decks that I just really want to showcase because I want you guys to start playing these decks. Not only because some of them are really good, but some of them are extremely fun. And this is one of those decks where it might be a little bit difficult to get above a 50%, but just hear me out. What if there was a rogue where you could play Party Planner Vona, where the whole point of the deck is to deal 8 damage to yourself so you could summon the Ouroboros. Now, how do you milk the value out of your Ouroboros? how about putting in every single copy card that is available for Rogue, so that way, hopefully no matter what gets hit, you have an Ouroboros that is going to be summoned extra copies because it is on your Buccaneers, it is on your Bumbling Bellhops, you could even put it on the Zilliax, for example. So the whole point of this deck is to play Vona, kill the Ouroboros, have the Death Rattle hit a copy card, so that way you could have multiple Ouroboroses, or you have a lot of snakes. You have a lot of snakes that are coming out and they're going to just pressure the board, but the biggest issue with this deck is obviously surviving in order to get to that Party Planner Vona turn. This right here is a Jiminator exclusive, so if you like what that guy brings into the metagame, definitely check out his stream. Jiminator is one of the most creative deck builders that I've ever seen in this game, and he still continues to surprise me with decks like this that absolutely nobody else would try. So if you're looking for an excuse to throw your ranks while having some fun and maybe getting a couple of clips out of it, I would highly recommend playing Party Planner Vona Rogue, because it is all about summoning those 8/8s in the fair and balanced way that people want them, right? Where you're not just playing them for 0 mana. Next up is my updated version on the Stuffy DK, and honestly, I feel like we kind of reverted a little bit. We kind of regressed with this deck, because one thing that I really wanted to try and make work was the Dark Gift Dragon that was available in the mini set. But after some testing, it is insane to me how a 5 mana 12/12 with essentially 8/8 taunt is not good enough. Like, that's just whack to me. I can't believe that this card is not good enough, and it just feels like the Dark Gift synergies in Death Knight are just not there, because Death Knight does not have any wiggle room in order to make other win conditions happen. What I exactly mean by that is the fact that Dark Gift discoveries are just too expensive. It takes too much time, and you would rather commit tempo as a DK instead of sacrificing your turn 3, for example, to effectively pass over initiative to your opponent, so that way you are now behind, and this deck really doesn't like being behind unless it has the Stuffy combo ready to go. So we have gotten rid of the draw a rush minion. We no longer have the Plucky Paint Fin that is in the deck in order to draw the Stuffy, so you actually need to focus on drawing through the deck. And we kind of had an aha moment the other day. Why not put in a prize vendor in this deck if card draw is so important, and it also works with the Brittlebone Buccaneer? So maybe I'll try this deck again, and maybe I post another video talking about how this deck is maybe a little bit more consistent than people think it is, but it's essentially the same Stuffy combo where you want to play your Stuffy. I don't have a non-signature version of the card, but it gains Reborn after you play a Frost spell and already has Rush. So the whole point of this deck is to play your Akanai Death Speaker with your Stuffies, play a Frost card. Once the Stuffy dies, you'll bring back essentially 2 Stuffies because of the Reborn, and this resummoning the Reborn essentially. And now you can play another Frost card. Your 2 Stuffies have Reborn, you trade those off, you have 4 Stuffies, you play another Frost card, and suddenly you have an entire board of unkillable minions unless your opponent has 2 AoEs or enough 1/1s in order to trade into your dogs. So yeah, Dog Stuffy DK, I feel like is a deck that not a lot of people are really experimenting with right now, but this deck has pretty solid game plan against a lot of the tempo-based decks that you will see. The only issue is that if you don't have the combo ready to go by turn 5, turn 6, that aggro deck may run you over. So play this deck at your own risk. It's not a 100% solidified list by data, but I believe this is the best version of the deck that I could make when someone was like, I really want to play this deck, please help me, Clark. And well, Stuffy DK, it's fun. I would give it a try if you're interested in this archetype. Next up is Wallet Priest. Now, if you saw one of our deck guides a couple of weeks or almost like a month ago, right at the beginning of the expansion, we've already highlighted this deck. And the whole point of this deck is to take advantage of your Twilight Medium as well as your Narian Sooth Fancy. So the real way that you can milk the most amount of value from this deck is to play your Overplanner. You want to play Overplanner so that way you know exactly when is the right time to play your Twilight Medium. Because let's say you have your Aviana that you can discount to 1 mana because of Twilight Medium. Now suddenly you can do your combo a lot sooner of playing your Champions of Azeroth for your 1 mana Archmage and Tinnitus, and you can just also do a whole bunch of other stuff now that you're running expensive win conditions such as Fyrakk, Ysera, Ziliax, or even like Bob in some cases, depending on what exactly you are doing. So this is like a wallet warrior, but it's a wallet priest because you have a lot of very expensive minions that can maybe spin the game in your favor. But this deck is extremely volatile. I would not recommend this deck if you are someone that is trying to grind. I would not recommend this deck if you are someone that wants to have the best rank in the game. I would not recommend this deck literally to anybody unless your name is specifically Tic Tac and you are just obsessed with this archetype and trying to make it work. But I like the idea of showing you guys the weird side of Hearthstone. This deck is definitely weird, and if this resonates with you, give it a try. See what happens, because the whole point of this deck is really just to put your faith in the overplanner, and if it fails, good luck figuring it out, because I don't know how this deck comes back from a very unfavorable position without some kind of insane Twilight Medium combo. But the one thing that is really important to keep in mind is that I was talking about Narian earlier, right? If you have Twilight Medium after you've activated your Narian, the minions, the copies that you're gonna get from the Fortunes are also going to be 1 mana. So you might even have a turn where you could play 3 1 mana Avianas, or maybe you can even discount them to 0 because you have Parrot Sanctuary available. So there's a lot of finesse that's available with this deck. It's one of the only ways that I've really seen people playing Priest if you're not playing an Imbue Priest, and even Imbue Priest is still not good enough to make it on this list, even after how many buffs? So yeah, Priest players, I kind of feel for you guys. Your archetypes are just always the most jank looking decks that are available in the game. And, well, at least we have aggro Priest, right? I'm gonna go cry in the corner real quick. Next up, we have Buff Warrior, and I just posted a video about this deck the other day, and it was my least watched video. People are just not interested in Tempo Warrior. They're just not. And I don't know if it's because of a gameplay issue where like people just don't like the gameplay of the deck. They think it's very boring, or if this is just an issue of this deck's not good, this deck's not powerful enough, so therefore people aren't interested in playing a bad warrior deck when Control Warrior is everything that they want and they're still having fun with it. So it's like you could play a Hydration Warrior. I don't have it on this list, but I feel like the lists that are popular are good enough. There's not really any major developments happening with Hydration Control Warrior, but I like Tempo Warrior. I like the idea of maybe being able to throw out a Frothing Berserker like the good old days, but this deck is, first of all, not running Frothing Berserker. Second of all, this doesn't even come close to filling that same, that same want, itching that same scratch. It's just really sad to me that unfortunately buff Tempo Warrior is in such a bad spot that you have to pray and hope that you hit the dream curve of like Gift Wrap Whelp into Petal Peddler. Maybe you have like all you can eat so you can play your Zavis, then you have a Dragon Turtle ready for value, then maybe you can play Menagerie Jug or your Keeper of the Flame. Like there's just so many specific circumstances where it's like so many things need to go right in order to play this deck and have success with it. So Blizzard, I really want you guys to try and figure out how to make Tempo Warrior good again, because I want to play some Frothing Berserkers. I want to hit some opponents in the face with Grim Patrons like the old day. We're probably not getting Grim Patron, but the point that I'm trying to make is that Buff Warrior is super interesting to me, but it looks like the rest of the community is just waiting for the next expansion before we get to do anything with aggro tempo-based warrior. Because Dragon Warrior's not good, Dark Gift Warrior's not good, and for certain, Handbuff Warrior is okay, but being okay is not successful in a Hearthstone meta. Up next, I want to give this deck another highlight because on the opposite side of the Warrior deck doing like the worst we've had on YouTube, it turns out a lot of people were really interested in Sleepy Demon Hunter. And I think it's just because they wanted to figure out how exactly this deck can win, not exactly that they want to win with it. Because the moment that you play Sleepy Resident, you're either going to sleep or your opponent is going to sleep. And if you're someone that doesn't like sleeping, then I don't know why you're playing this deck. I don't know, man. But it's one of those things to where this deck is a lot stronger than people originally gave it credit, because there are a couple of different ways that you can win. If you are lucky enough to have the curve of Sleepy Resident into Carnivorous Cubicle against a deck that cannot deal with it, you almost automatically win on the spot. But in order to do this combo a little bit more consistently, a little bit more favorably, is waiting until turn 10 after you've killed a Sleepy Resident. Then you can play your Ravenous Fell Hunter into Carnivorous Cubicle, and now there are 2 Sleepy Residents as well as another Ravenous Fell Hunter, plus the cube that your opponent has to deal with, and that is very difficult for a lot of decks to come back from. Now you do have 2 Fell Hunter, 2 cube combos that you can do in case your opponent does deal with 1. You have plenty of stall available in the deck by playing the return policy to get even more Sleepy Residents. You have Bob as a stall turn, and you have plenty of AoE, so you are just trying to stall the game until you play your Kill Jaden, get big demons to kill your opponent, or eventually you're just going to win with the tempo you generate from the Fell Hunter, because if your opponent kills 1 minion and then they can't kill the rest of the board, where do you think your board's gonna go next turn? It's gonna go face. So this deck has a little bit more finesse than some people would originally think, and if you're somebody that doesn't like the direction of Demon Hunter because of Pig Demon Hunter or because of all the other Demon Hunter decks with like Cliff Dive, now you can play something that I guess is a little bit more fair. Next up is a deck that I wanted to showcase because this was an idea that was given to me by somebody in chat, and I'm not really sure if this is the perfect 30 of how to play this particular deck. I'm not really a big fan of Cremate, for example, but the whole point of this deck is to utilize the Amalgam. How do we utilize the Amalgam in this deck? Here's the setup. You want to play the Stranded Spaceman. The only Draenei that's in the deck is going to be the Amalgam. So now the Amalgam is going to have +2 health and rush whenever you have it. The other thing that you want to do is to give this Amalgam Poison Breath because it is also an undead. So now you have an Amalgam that has rush and poisonous to help you kill a minion every single turn. But there's another thing that you can do with this deck. You can also play Threads of Despair on that Amalgam, especially after it has Poisonous, so that way you have a 1 mana rush minion that will guarantee destroy the entire board, because the way that Threads works is that if you put Threads on a Poisonous minion, it deals 1 damage of Poisonous, which means everything dies. So there might be a very interesting deck with this kind of idea where you are trying to keep yourself alive, and now you have this Amalgam high roll to effectively give you a clear every single turn. Now granted, the one thing you can't do with this type of deck, you can't play Kill Jaden. So maybe I should try this deck out in order to see how good it actually is, so that way I can give more fodder to saying that Kill Jaden is a terrible card and you should never play it. That's the whole reason why I decided to showcase this deck, was that really funny joke of it's bad with Kill Jaden. But it's also a very interesting, you know, deck concept, and I want to see more things like this. So if you guys have any kind of interesting decks that you want to show me, leave a deck in the comments below, or come by our Discord and drop a deck in our deck list tabs, because that's where I see a lot of very unique lists, and sometimes those lists do make it into future streams as well as future videos. I'm probably not going to play this deck because it's a little bit too specific in the metagame that I am currently encountering, but if you're looking for an interesting way of playing a Death Knight deck with like a pseudo combo that removes the board every single turn, I would give this deck a try. It seems like a lot of fun. I want you guys to look at this card. How many of you guys have played with this card? How many of you guys have even seen this card in action? And I want you guys to be honest with me. How many of you guys, is this your first time ever seeing this card? Because this card does not see play, and I have 3 decks that I have prepared that I want to showcase the power of Zaqali Flamemancer, a 6 mana 4/4 Battlecry minion. If every card in your hand is of a different mana cost, reduce their cost by 2. So essentially think Emperor Thaurissan, but it's even got even more setup because now you can't activate the value unless every single card in your hand is of a different cost. So how do we make this work? Bear with me for a second. This combo right here was made by Language Hacker, and he was able to pop off this combo at top 1000 legend. So I don't want to hear a single complaint from people telling me that this deck is too weird, this combo is too specific, and it's not possible, because I literally I have done it myself, and Language Hacker has won several games with this deck at top 1000 legend. Don't let your memes be dreams. So the way that you win with this deck is by playing your Zaqali Flamemancer when you have the value on the following cards. You want to hit your Gam Gam, you want to hit the Dorian Puppet Master, and you want to hit the Soul Searching. The reason why all of this is very important is because what you're going to do is you are going to deck out, okay? It's very important that you deck out. So that way, when you play your Gam Gam after discounting your hand, you can then play Saladrassil, and you're probably going to deal 6 damage because it's been discounted as well. So you're going to play Gam Gam into Saladrassil. The Gam Gam has corrupted the Saladrassil, so now you get the copy of Corrupted Dream to shuffle the Gam Gam back into the deck. Starting to see where we're going with this? Because then you can play your Puppet Master Dorian into Soul Searching to get the Gam Gam from the deck. You now have 2 10-mana Gam Gams plus the 1-mana Gam Gam that is available from the Dorian, so that way you can play 1 mana into 10 mana into 10 mana. That's already 26 damage that you have stolen from their health, because it doesn't matter, it's gonna bypass armor, and then you can just play any of the other cards in your hand in order to give you lethal, so that way you can win the game by effectively getting 4 battle cries of the Gam Gam for lethal. Tell me you are not entertained after me explaining this combo. It is so interesting. It is so cool. This right here is what made me love combo decks to begin with. Is something like this, where there are a lot of steps, there are a lot of things that you have to do, and you have to actually play the game in order to get the combo. King Plus players, where are you at? Take some notes. This is a real man's combo deck. This is what I want for combo decks in Hearthstone, to have some sort of very interesting, very creative combos that you can make by yourself. Like, I love this deck conceptually. Now, how does it actually perform? It's a little bit up there. Like, it works against the slower decks, but against the faster decks, you are definitely going to have a little bit more of some trouble, which is why we're going to play typical control Warlock cards like Table Flip. We've still got your Eternal Layover, Ultralisk. We still have the typical Warlock cards that are good. But it's also running Fractured Power. So I feel like this deck has everything that you could possibly want in a Hearthstone deck, where it's a control deck, it's a combo deck, it has a very unique combo that when you play it up against your opponent, they are probably going to sit back and watch it because they don't know what's going on. I love combos where even someone that hates OTKs is still sitting there like, damn, that was impressive. And that is what this deck is. It's omega impressive. Huge shout out to Language Hacker for coming up with this combo. But the next 2 decks are my own creation on how we can make Zaqali Flamemancer good. Trust me, I've got some spicy ideas. So unfortunately with this deck right here, I've already popped off this combo and I have a video prepared for it, but I couldn't get it out before the patch notes came out last week, and now I've just been completely drowning in all of these other new decks that I have to try, and I will be posting this video eventually. But we have another Zaqali Flamemancer combo where it's very similar to the Warlock deck, where we want to try and deck out our deck if at all possible. And we don't necessarily need to draw into the end of our deck. We just have to make sure that we draw all of the minions out of our deck. That's very important. We want all of the minions out of our deck, so that way we can play Zaqali Flamemancer on Calligrapho the Artist, the Arana, the Bucket of Soldiers, and the Envoy of Prosperity. This is the reason why you want to have no minions available in the deck, because the combo turn is to essentially play Bucket of Soldiers. You can kill it with the you can kill it with the Headhunt. Headhunt is another card you want discounted, by the way. So you want to discount your Headhunt, your Envoy, your Bucket of Soldiers, your Calligrapho, as well as your Arana. So that way you can play Bucket into kill the Bucket with Headhunt. You now have 5 minions on the field that are 1/1s. You can then play your Envoy of Prosperity to put the Briarspawn Drake back into your deck, and then you can play the Calligrapho in order to draw that Briarspawn Drake, and you have 6 minions that are transformed into 12/7 dragons that deal damage at the end of the turn. Granted, Your opponent needs some minions in order for this to work. But isn't this a really cool idea? Isn't this something that you want to see from your content creators a bit more frequently? I will be posting videos about these decks very soon because every single one of these decks that I am showing you, I have popped off the combo. I did it with that Warlock deck. I have done it with this Demon Hunter deck, and I have done it with the other Demon Hunter deck I'm going to show you. Because remember Octosari? This is my new version of Octosari Demon Hunter, and it is more degenerate, it is more insane, and honestly, I should be put into an insane asylum because I can't believe I came up with this kind of combo. The whole point of this deck is to do exactly what Armor Demon Hunter does, giving yourself a ridiculous amount of armor to where hopefully you start going into fatigue. That's right, you want to draw your own fatigue because that will just increase the amount of damage that this deck can do. Because the whole point of this deck is to have Octosari, Arana, Big Game Hunter, and Return Policy available in your hand to be discounted by the Zaqali Flamemancer. And once you have discounted all of those cards and you are sitting at fatigue, you can then play your Arana Thrillseeker into Octosari. You can then play Big Game Hunter on the Octosari in order to draw 8 cards from the deck and force your opponent to take that damage. But you can also play a Return Policy in order to make your opponent draw 8 cards more, and you can also set this all up with a Ceaseless Expanse beforehand, so you can guarantee that all 16 of those fatigue shots go to your opponent. And the best thing about this deck is because you have infinite armor with the defense crystals, you can pop off this combo when you're ready for it. Now, it doesn't really matter because it feels like you probably already won the game. Yes, it does matter. How else are we gonna win a game with Octosari in Hearthstone? I don't care what you have to say about this deck that makes it uninteractive, that makes it not fun to go up against. No. What matters is that I won a game with Octosari, I played my Zaqali Flamemancer, and I put it into a deck that's actually going to give it the best possible chance of enacting the combo. So I don't care if you hate Armored Demon Hunter, I don't care if you think this playstyle is uninteractive. What I thrive on is coming up with a combo and it being so unique that I only need to execute it once and it will make people very interested and very happy. So if you're somebody that really wants to make Octosari Demon Hunter possible within Hearthstone, don't let your memes be dreams. Figure out how you can use Zaqali Flamemancer yourself to come up with some of the most unique combos that no one else has ever seen before. Because I have only seen me and Language Hacker mess with this cards. So Clark HELLSCREAM Horde, rise up. I need you guys to start playing Zaqali Flamemancer. So thank you so much for making it to the end of this top 5 decks video. Hopefully we'll get this out very soon so you guys can come on by the charity stream that we are doing for the American Heart Association. We're calling it the Heart of the Cards. Because why wouldn't we? So guys, hopefully you enjoyed all the decks that are here. One more time, don't let your memes be dreams. Play the decks that you enjoy within the game, especially if you legitimately really enjoy their play style. Do what you want in the game, have fun, play some Funstone, don't just focus on the wins. I'll see you guys on the charity stream, and we'll definitely see you for the next video.